security that he understood and he knew. And it was all to pursue a promise. Let go of what's guaranteed and go pursue the promise that I'm going to bless you. Why? Because faith had opened his eyes. Something inside of Moses really became open and aware. He realized that everything in Egypt was temporary. Moses understood what God was offering him was going to be eternal, and what he's already experienced and what he has and what his future looks like, all that is temporal and it's not going to mean anything. And here's the truth that every one of us in this room, we cannot ignore. Real faith does not just believe in God when it's convenient. And that's what a lot of us do. When it's convenient, we believe in God. It doesn't just acknowledge Him while He's holding everything together, which He's always holding everything together. But our problem is we want to acknowledge Him while we hold on to everything else, and that's not what He's calling us to do, because real faith chooses God. Moses walked away from all that. He didn't hold on to a little bit of it. He didn't say, I'm coming back to it, or let me take a little bit with me. No, he chose God. And real faith chooses God. Real faith, it chooses God when it costs you something. Real faith chooses God when it means you got to let go of what we think is good. It chooses God when the path is unclear, but it's undeniable. That's the thing about walking in faith and stepping in faith and doing God's will. There are times that you have no clue what you are doing, but you know there's an undeniable just feeling inside of you that I know I'm doing the right thing. I don't understand this. Don't know why I'm doing this, but I know it's what God's called me to do. I know it's where He's called me to be. And right now it don't look like what I thought it was going to look like, but I still know that God's called me to do this. Moses teaches us a lot of lessons. You can have everything the world offers and still walk away. Because once you've seen what God has for you, Moses come to the realization nothing compares to this. Nothing compares to this. I don't care what all Pharaoh has. I don't care how easy my life looks. I don't care that the road's already been paved. I don't care how smart I am. I don't care about all these people in my life. I realize what God has for me is bigger and better than this. And here's the problem that Moses had. He had a false identity. And faith refuses false identity. Look what it says in verse 24. It says that he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Moses had a title. He had a position. He had a name that commanded respect. But it wasn't his true identity. He refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. On paper, this dude is Egyptian royalty. To the world, he has everything and every reason to embrace the label that's on him. He has everything. He could have lived a life of ease, Danny. Vicky, he had luxury. He had honor. He never had to question his place or his future. He was set. I mean, he was set, but deep down, Moses knew the truth. This is not who I really am. Faith gave him the courage to step up and say, I'm not what my culture tells me I should be. I'm not defined by convenience. I'm not defined by comfort. I'm not defined by the approval of all these people. That's not what defines me. I am who God says I am. And Moses made the choice. Your calling, your purpose, your destiny, none of those can flourish if you cling to false identity. Many people, we've seen it in churches and in business, and we stay in roles, we stay in relationships, we stay in situations that God never intended for us to sit, but we stay because we're comfortable. I've got accustomed to being here. I know what I get to do tomorrow. It's easy, and I don't have to worry. I come, I show up, I do the same thing. And what we've gotten to the place is a lot of Christians have settled for a label and a title or an applause and a life that God never intended them to be in. Faith calls us to a higher standard, church. Faith refuses to be satisfied with what the world's definitions are. I read this quote and it said, faith says, I would rather be who God called me to be than who the world celebrates me for being. That's the problem. Many of us, we like the applause we get for being the person that God doesn't intend us to be. But it strokes our egos. It makes us feel good. Moses refused the identity of Pharaoh's household because he recognized the identity that God had placed on him. Our identity is not in this world. Your identity is found in Christ Jesus. And when you begin to walk into that truth for who God says you are, you're going to start making choices that reflect purpose over position. You're going to start making choices that reflect calling over comfort. And it's not easy. Faith doesn't settle, church. And I look at Moses. He refused the counterfeit. I mean, who would not have wanted to stay there? He had it made. But he was not about to embrace an identity that God didn't give to him. And that's the thing. Look, verse 25. Faith sometimes chooses pain over pleasure. It says, choosing rather to endure ill treatment than to enjoy the temporary pleasures of sin. Here the scripture highlights a choice that Moses makes that many would find unimaginable. I have seen it with my own eyes. I have seen people who God has called to ministry, but they refuse to give up their wealth and their prestige and their title for the calling that God has placed on them. Moses refused the identity of Pharaoh's household. Think about that. He chose suffering with God's people over the ease of basically indulgence of Egypt's palaces. I mean, he gave up caviar for Spam. He had it made. He had it made. You need to grasp this, understand this. Moses had it made, and he chose to willingly endure hardship. He chose rejection. Moses chose the discomfort that came with following God rather than settling for the pleasures that were fleeting. And notice the phrase, choosing rather to endure ill treatment than to enjoy the what? The temporary pleasures. Temporary. Adam kind of talked about this a little bit the other night. Church, sin always has a short shelf life. It feels good in the moment. And I get mad when people say, no, it don't. If it didn't, you wouldn't do it. It feels good in the moment. But man, it fades fast. It always promises satisfaction, but it never fulfills. You're always looking for the next whatever out of it. Sin has this incredible ability to lure us in with this illusion of joy. This is going to fix your life. It's like he's not here tonight, it's like a car salesman. And as I say that, we need to remember him. He messaged me today, he's got pancreatitis. They wanted to keep him, and he told them no, but he's home. So pray for Travis. But I'm going to talk about him while he's gone. But it's like they paint you this picture. I can remember years ago, Talina and I went to the, what's it called when they, No, we went to where they try to sell you the rooms for the year, timeshare. And we knew what we were going to, and it was one of those, just say no, just say no, just say no. We're getting the free room, getting this. And Talina's like, no. And I'm like, this sounds good. This sounds good, Mick. Just say no. Like, say no. But he painted this illusion of joy. And then I'm sitting there thinking, why would I pay that kind of money to go stay in a room one night a year that I'm never going to use again? But Talina's like, no. And I'm like, hey, let's think about it. All that stuff that Satan pictures and puts out there, and it always leaves us empty. Moses understood something crucial that many of us always overlook. What is easy now will cost us later. We settle for easy and we pay for it later. And faith is never about an easy path. It's never. It's about choosing God's eternal plan over temporary comfort. And, it requires saying no when your husband's trying to say yes. And you just keep saying no. It demands us walking away when everybody else is just happy to stay. And when we say no, when we do walk away, guess what? You're going to endure criticism. It's coming. Look at that old fuddy-dud. Why don't he want to do this? Why don't he want to do that? You're always going to be misunderstood. There's always going to be rejection at the sake of obedience. And it's okay, because it's temporary. Faith does not pursue the path of least resistance. Faith doesn't chase what feels good, what's convenient, what brings immediate gratification. Faith doesn't chase that stuff. Faith pursues what is right, even when it's hard. It chooses to chase after what's eternal, even when it doesn't give us instant gratification. It chases the things that aligns with God's will. And many times that stuff is not easy. That's the principle that Moses shows us. Egypt offered pleasure. It gave him prestige. He had everything, but it never could deliver purpose. It would give him all the pleasures and the notoriety, but it would never fulfill his eternal destiny. While the world was giving him applause and it was easy and he was just indulging, his soul was never satisfied. He realized, this is not who I am. This is not who I'm supposed to be. And I'm telling you, comfort tempts our flesh. We love comfort. I mean, my good Lord, every time I walk in the door, the first thing I do is go to comfort and pull the lever beside of her. It's just what we do. There's no greater comfort than to get in the recliner and know your dog's coming to check on you. That's comfort. But comfort will never, ever, ever fulfill the calling of God. Faith sees beyond the moment. It sees beyond the temporary. Faith understands, man, that we're going to endure pain. But at the end, there's a lasting reward for this. Other people may be enjoying pleasures, but there's going to be a day of regret. Moses chose the harder road because Moses understood. He valued the eternal over the temporary. He saw the unseen. That's what it goes on to say, over the visible. He understood God's plan was going to be greater than my personal comfort in the moment. Faith is not the absence of difficulty. It's courage to choose God over ease. And faith will redefine what riches really are. Look on into that verse. Considering the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt. One of the most powerful lessons from Moses' life. Faith changes the way we measure value. Think about that. Faith changes the way we measure value. Used to, value was the new car smell. But then it faded away and you still had the coupon book. You just go get a newer smell. What the world calls riches is not always what God calls riches. I have found that your friendship is more in riches than personal belongings at times. I have found that your prayers are more valuable than the other gifts. I mean, I've come to find those things out. Moses had been surrounded by Egypt's wealth. He had the power. He had this prestige all of his life, and he saw, I mean, think about it. He saw the splendor of the palaces, the authority that came from Pharaoh's throne. He saw the treasures of the kingdom, and I mean, there was nothing matched to that. And on the surface, everything about his life would say, man, Moses is successful. I mean, again, by our human standards, Moses had it all. And yet Moses looks at it different. He didn't see what the world calls riches as wealth. He recognized that the treasures of Egypt were temporary. They were fleeting and ultimately empty compared to the eternal rewards that was waiting on him for walking faithfully with God. Faith will make us radically shift in our thinking. It has a way of rewiring our heart to value what the world overlooks. To the world, wealth is silver and gold. To faith, true riches is being aligned with God's purpose. To the world, power is influence over others. To us in the faith, true power is obedience to the invisible hand of God. That's powerful. To the world, comfort, luxury, ease, all that stuff. And to faith, it's true comfort, it's peace in knowing that we can trust God at all times. Because I realize to the world that luxury, that ease, that comes to an end. There's just some things money can't buy. And that comes to an end. And Moses chose to consider the reproach of Christ. It's what the Scripture says. I'd rather be identified with God's people suffering for God's call and obeying God's call on my life as a greater wealth than all the treasures I had in Egypt. I'll walk away from all of it now to trust God. That's faith. Many of us, we would see the glitter and the surface. And Moses saw beyond it. What looks like loss in the natural is gain in the spiritual. And we can't get that. What the world calls shame, it's honor in God's eyes. You think about it, what the world values may actually enslave them. While God values just what He liberates us. And I've said this for weeks. The very thing that we value on this earth, we're going to be soon walking on. Like we value gold and silver. And eventually that's going to be our streets. Moses teaches us that riches aren't counted by what we possess. We better be careful because our riches are possessing us. What about our devotion? What about our obedience? What about our willingness to walk in faith even when it costs us everything that this world considers valuable? Faith should redefine our priorities. It did Moses's, and he had a choice. It shifted his focus from the temporary treasures that he said was going to fade to this calling, this reward that was going to last forever. Moses was rich in every way you could possibly think of. And Pharaoh was going to make him richer. I have come to realize in my life that true wealth is not measured by what you hold in your hands, but it's what you hold in your heart to God. And you know, instead of chasing all the stuff of Egypt's treasures, Moses sat down and he had a moment. He said, I'm just going to recalculate what true wealth really means. And he considered all the things of the world and he dismissed them. They were undesirable. I mean, and to him, he considered them foolish. I mean, Paul even talked about the things of this world being foolish. And he counted the eternal reward of God far more valuable than gold and silver. Who's given that up to suffer for God? Knowing that you're going to endure hardships for the sake of the calling that's on your life. He valued being identified with God's people. He says, I'm not going to take the name of Pharaoh's people. I'm identified with God. I'm a child of God. And he says, I'm going to walk in obedience to that. Faith changed Moses' value system. It flipped the way that he saw success and loss. What the world calls loss, faith calls gain. And then what the world calls success, in all honesty, faith calls it a distraction. It distracts us from what we should be doing. True riches are not found in material wealth and titles and recognition from others. It's not found in what money can buy. True wealth is found in God's presence. True wealth is found in God's purpose for your life. True wealth is found in God's approval. We're chasing everybody's approval. And the only one that matters is the one we're ignoring the most. Moses understood the greatest wealth is spiritual. It's eternal. It's unshakable. And faith equips you to see beyond the visible, to the temporary, to the unseen, the eternal. Faith fixes our eyes on the eternal reward. Verse 26, he says, for he was looking to the reward. Moses didn't just simply walk away from Egypt out of rebellion or out of dissatisfaction. He didn't just turn his back on comfort for no reason. He said, I'm walking to something that is far greater than what I'm leaving. And again, to people, that looked ignorant. He was guided by a vision. He removed himself from the here and now. and got a vision of God's promise and purpose that no earthly treasure could rival. Faith always has that kind of vision. It always looks beyond the present moment. It always goes beyond your immediate circumstances. It always goes beyond the temporary challenges. And it fixes its eyes on the reward. Faith sees beyond today's struggle. We have them. Faith sees beyond temporary sacrifice. Faith sees beyond what God has prepared for you. The reward that is unseen by the natural eyes, but it's guaranteed to us that are faithful. When we live only for what we see and touch and we settle, that's what happens. We get comfortable. We settle in. We get our spiritual lazy boy out. That's why Moses was able to endure hardship, rejection, ridicule. He realized, man, my mind is set on the eternal. I know what God has, I know what's beating in my heart right now. I know what He's breathed in my spirit, and it goes beyond this temporary stuff. He wasn't swayed by what was visible. He wasn't, he was motivated by what God had showed him, that thing in the faith, and he saw the unseen God at work and understood temporary things are always fleeting. And faith teaches us a very crucial principle. You'll never truly deny yourself, refuse shortcuts, or make sacrifices for God until you clearly see what God has in store for you. That's what Moses did. Faith is not blind. Faith, it's not wishful thinking. It's not just throw it out there and hope it hits something. Faith is seeing the eternal in the midst of the temporary. Comfort loses appeal. Pleasure loses its pull. Moses walked by faith and he saw the invisible. Verse 27. For he endured as seeing him who is unseen. Here's the secret of Moses' strength. He walked by faith, not by sight. He walked by spiritual sight, not just natural vision. Man, he called it way before Paul spoke it. While people around him was fixated on Pharaoh, on obstacles, on all the danger, all the uncertainty, Moses looked beyond the visible and he saw the invisible hand of God at work. What a story. When other people saw Pharaoh, Moses saw God's plan. When everybody else was looking at danger, Moses said, I see destiny. When everybody else was looking and thinking, man, you're giving all that up. Look at what you're losing. And he was like, look what I'm gaining. There's a better reward than this. Everybody else was like, Moses, this is impossible. And Moses, he saw God's power made perfect in his weakness. Again, it was spiritual sight. It gave him clarity. He wasn't confused. Faith is not just believing that God exists, church. It's seeing His presence, His promises in every circumstance of our life. We know that He's for us. When you truly see God, guess what? Fear loses its grip. When you truly see God, pressure loses its power. When you truly see God, the world, it loses its pull on you. And that's our problem. This world has a tug on us. Church, this is not our home. We are only passing through. You've got to stop letting this temporary stuff tug at you. Because if we don't, there's going to be a day that we wish we did. It's temporary. Paul said, Moses was like, you got to have endurance. You got to see beyond right now. You got to have real perseverance. When your eyes are fixed on God, you can see those things. Moses endured because he was anchored. He was anchored in what could touch and control. I mean, he was anchored in who God was. Faith, that's what it is, just knowing who God is. You know, I seen this today. Someone said, when your eyes are on the unseen, no trial is too great, no sacrifice too costly, and no calling too difficult. Moses' life teaches us that. The vision of God, the unseen reward, the eternal purpose that God has for people who trust Him. Faith endures because it doesn't have its eyes on the flesh. And this is my closing challenge, and then I want us to pray. Moses' life confronts each one of us with a question. What are you choosing? Comfort or calling? Pleasure or purpose? Are we choosing the temporary satisfaction of this world, or are we choosing the eternal reward? Because here's the truth, you can't have it all. You can't cling to Egypt and step into God's promise. You can't hold on to the fleeting pleasures that we once thought we enjoyed and still try to embrace the eternal joy that God has prepared for us. It can't be done. Choices have consequences. And faith requires a decision. What are we choosing? Moses teaches us that the path of faith, it's not easy. It always begins with a choice, though. We may lose comfort, we may give up pleasure, we may face hardship, but in doing so, we gain calling, we gain purpose, we gain an eternal reward. So let this be our declaration. I'm not going to trade my calling for comfort. I'm not going to trade my purpose for fleeting pleasure. I'm going to walk by faith. I'm going to see the invisible, and I'm going to embrace the eternal reward that God has for me. Moses' faith was costly, but it bought him everything that truly mattered. And he walked out in the sunset with the Lord. Joshua, buddy, it's yours. I'm going to go hang out with the Lord.